Welcome to Across the Spectrum Facebook Live event. This is the first Facebook Live event we've done. We are here hosted by Any Baby Can, but please welcome to all of our friends at Any Baby Can, Autism Lifeline Links, Autism Community Network, and Arc of San Antonio Facebook pages. So we're excited to be here today. My name is Cara Magrane, and I'm the Executive Director of Autism Lifeline Links. Autism Lifeline Links is a project out of San Antonio, out of the Kronkowski Charitable Foundation, and it's a collective of 10 agencies, soon to be 15 agencies, that are all working with people who are on the spectrum, and our goal is to try to collaborate, communicate more effectively, and to increase services in our community. So we're really excited to be here and have this opportunity. Today we have a couple of subjects we're going to cover, but first I'd like to introduce you to our panel today. So to my right we have Ms. Tisha Gonzales from Any Baby Can.
Hi everyone.
And then we have Ms. Heather Long from the Arc of San Antonio.
Hello.
And then we have Dr. Berenice DelaCruz from Autism Community Network.
Hello everybody.
So we're happy to be here. So I hope you're tuning into all four of those different pages. So we have a couple of subjects, and we'd like to start this morning just talking a little bit about parental stress. And when you have a child with a developmental disability, particularly a child on the spectrum, sometimes it can be difficult and challenging with everything that needs to be done, even with a typical family and typical kiddos. So I'm going to let Tisha talk a little bit about some of those stress indicators and some of the things that we can do to have greater empathy around that and provide some services.
Sure. So here at Any Baby Can, through our Autism Services program, we offer parent education classes and counseling sessions, along with toilet training and a variety of other sessions of information, strategies, and training for families. And many of the families that come through our program often talk about stress that they're having within the family. So some of the stresses are commonly that we hear often are different parenting styles. So one parent might be parenting their child with autism one way while another parent is not. And so there can be some tension between parents or caretakers within the family, even within extended family members who maybe don't understand the diagnosis of autism and how to support that child. And so that adds a lot of stress to the family. There's also stress within families too, for financial stress and financial burdens, because oftentimes we see families that maybe the mother or one of the parents is not able to work anymore because she's taking care of the child with autism. So that's less income for the family, or taking the child to various therapies throughout the day also causes that family member to have to maybe not work as much. So that adds a whole stress. We know life in general is very stressful, but you add autism to the mix, it does add some additional stress to the family. And so we work really hard within our program and with other agencies that we collaborate with to offer parents ways to deal with stress within our program, strategies to keep stress at a minimum within your own family, things to do. But then we support families by giving them recommendations and connections with other places and agencies in the community that they can take their kids to for like respite care, for respite support, like Respite Care San Antonio, where they can take their child for a day for mom's night out or for a Saturday, so then that parent can then go and take care of whatever they need to take care of during the day. Places like Camp offer support throughout the year for families, offer summer camps. Special Reach also does too. So Any Baby Can really I think does a super job in connecting families with those services in the community. And then, like I said, within our own Autism Services program, we offer group counseling. We offer our variety of educational sessions, because we feel that knowledge is power. The more you know, then the more you know how to then meet the needs of your child and your children. We have sibling support as well, so because that can add stress to that parent that maybe might be feeling that the sibling of the child with autism is not getting what they're needing. So we also work with other agencies like ACN and the ARC for other various services that can help alleviate stress and answer questions for the family that they're having.
So when we talk about, we often are so focused on the child with a developmental disability. And before I go on to that, I want to make sure that we tell all of our friends at the 4 agencies that are viewing this to please go and post questions to our Facebook page, because we will get to those as we go through this session here. So please go and post your questions for our wonderful panel. But, you know, we talk about, so often the focus is on the child with a developmental disability, and one of the things that is really important, of course, is the other children in the home, the children who are maybe neurotypical, or sometimes those children may have other emotional issues or educational issues that come up. So it's really important that we make sure that all the agencies that are working with these families have that support for siblings. So Any Baby Can has great sibling support programs, and then the other agencies, Special Reach, CAMP, Rest the Care San Antonio, ARC has day programming for the adults as well. And all of those agencies, many of them take the child with the developmental disability as well as the non-disabled siblings, so that parent can get a little bit of that reprieve. And often I used to find that the non-disabled siblings who were so worried about having the right activities for them, but so often they found their own sibling friends and had those relationships, so that they knew they weren't the only kid out there who had a brother or a sister who has whether CP or autism or whatever it may be. So does anybody have any other respite or reprieve or stress busters that we can share with the people on our Facebook?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important for parents to really feel like they're part of a community and that they're not alone. And so I think when we have different groups that meet, you know, like MOGA, I know is a group out there that's meeting in our community, and other events, like we try to host events throughout the year. We call them our family empowerment events, and one of the ones we recently had was inviting people out to the Missions baseball game.
That's fun.
And so we did Autism Night at the Missions baseball game, and it's really just an opportunity, of course, to raise awareness and acceptance of autism, but also an opportunity for families to come out and bring their children and know that they're going to be in that supported environment and be able to do activities that all other children are able to have access to in a place where they feel like it's going to be safe. And I think that also provides an opportunity for us to really educate the community to a different level, because I think it's one thing for us to talk about what autism is, but then when you actually see it, so it's we're raising autism awareness, but then you're seeing these children, how are they behaving, how is this impacting their families, and how can we really support and make that really inclusive. It's really a learning opportunity as well for our communities, and so those are definitely events that we want to be a part of.
Definitely, Berenice, so those events that you offer and that the variety of agencies offer help families connect with other families.
Yes,
and see that they're not
for sure.
alone, see that they're traveling the same journey, see that they have many similarities and they can learn from each other. And so we see that a lot, where families are like, oh, you know, this is what you do, or this is what you tried. And so that connection of not being alone is, I think, so vital.
That mentorship is
Yes.
super important. I think especially because we have some families that are newly diagnosed, so they just received the diagnosis and they're just starting off in their process.
Right.
Some families where they're middle school, high school adults, and they can connect and say, this has been my journey. Let me share that with you.
Right? Yeah.
And sometimes finding people that are in the same journey, and so you're like, let's walk hand in hand with this. What do you know? What do I know? And for us too, it's learning, right? We learn from the resources that parents tell us what has really worked and not. So I think it's like a learning opportunity for everyone.
And just across Texas, there's a group called Texas Parent to Parent that I think is really, really important for families to know about. And that's across all ages. So if you are looking for that mentor, or you have that question about one particular Medicaid waiver program or style of therapy, then the best teacher, I think, is another parent to tell you what their experiences have been.
I used to call it the sisterhood effect, right? So often, you know, those moms, they just see their one child with, you know, a cool set of headphones or something else, and they say, where did you get that? How did you? And it creates this kinship that's really important. And like I said, Dr. Cruz, then they're not necessarily alone. You know, the other good place, there's so much great information out there. It isn't just from the 10 agencies that are in the Autism Lifeline Links project, but Autism Society and Autism Speaks are also excellent websites for how-tos or tutorials, and then from there you can find blogs. We know so often we're talking about the children with autism in the Autism Lifeline Links project. We want to make sure we're opening that up to the adult population as well, and letting people know that Autism Lifeline Links is for adults. We need adults who are autistic to register. And even though services, an abundance of services may not exist for the adult population, we're working on it. And part of the project is to find out what those barriers are, find out what those gaps are, and try to improve that system. So I think those are those kinds of things that you know, the meetup groups, there's all sorts of great stuff. So just search that and find what fits for you, I think is also really important.
And I think it's important for families out there to realize it's not just moms. We see more and more dads coming to support groups, coming to trainings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and so that whole family becoming coming together for training, for support is so valuable. So, you know, get everybody involved in that, supporting that child.
And so that's a great opportunity to talk about even diagnosis, right? And so the difference is when we talk about an autism community, we want that autism community to grow and grow and grow and be our entire city of San Antonio, not just the autism community of people or families who are directly affected or impacted by autism. So when we talk about autism and getting that diagnosis and easing that parent into that diagnosis, or even if you have a concern about your child, what do you do? Where do you go? What are some of the early signs that you might need to, you know, look at a diagnostic tool, bring it up to your practitioner, bring it up to one of the agencies. So I'm going to let Dr. Cruz talk to us a little bit about diagnosis.
Great. One of the biggest things that I always like to talk about is the fact that if, as a parent, you are concerned about your child's development, there's probably something there that needs to be looked at. And so some of the things to be, you know, on the lookout for are, you know, if you call your child's name and they're not readily responding to you, not just because, you know, they're really interested in what they're doing, but if it's like typically most of the time they're not responding to me, that coupled with, you know, they never bring you items to show you. It's usually like, oh, look what I did, or oh, hey, check that out over there. You know, our joint attention that we talk about, it's often impaired in our kiddos on the spectrum. And, you know, sometimes those sensory challenges are sometimes appearing as challenging behaviors where you might not be able to take your child to HEB because it's really loud, or there's too many lights that are bothering them. People are too close, and those sensory challenges, you know, often come hand in hand with autism. And so if you are concerned about autism, definitely bring it up to your pediatrician. Pediatricians should be assessing for autism at 18 months and 24 months. So when you go for the well child checkup at 18 and 24 months, you should get, usually it's like a one-page questionnaire and asks you questions about your child's development. And if there are some concerns that are red flags, then that should be then sent for a further assessment of autism. And here we have our organization, Autism Community Network, where we do assessments. We also have Children's Hospital and a few other private agencies that will do the medical diagnosis of autism. So when you come to a place like Autism Community Network, we have our developmental behavioral pediatrician that will assess for autism. And you know, the child might receive a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis of autism, which is different than an educational diagnosis of autism. So when your child is age 3, they can go to a school district and request an evaluation, an educational evaluation, to see if they qualify for services as a child with autism. And that criteria can be a little different from a medical diagnosis. So for the educational diagnosis, really looking at how are the behaviors or autism, how is autism impacting them in the educational setting? So is it impacting their ability to learn and interact with the other children? And so they may be able to get an autism diagnosis from that educational perspective that will then open up all of those autism services at the school. And then in addition, they will need a separate medical diagnosis of autism because oftentimes things like waiver programs, which you're going to be talking about here shortly, and even access to therapies will require a medical diagnosis. And that medical diagnosis is going to be provided by a medical doctor, so it'll be an MD after their name, whether it be a pediatrician, developmental pediatrician, developmental behavioral pediatrician, neurologist, or it could also be a PhD or a PsyD, which is going to be a psychologist, and they're a licensed psychologist at the PhD level or a PsyD level. which is different from your LSSPs, licensed specialists in school psychology, or master level practitioners in providing an educational diagnosis. So children need to be able to have both often to get access to full services, and it's really important to know that difference. And for diagnosis, it's really important to do an in-depth evaluation of the child. So I can't just see a child and say, oh, you know, I really know autism, this child has autism. It's really important for us to be able to, you know, interact with the child and do assessments. There are, you know, gold standards for assessing autism, things like the ADOS-2, the Autism Diagnostic Observation Scale, which is the gold standard for diagnosing autism, along with other things that come as part of the full diagnostic assessment. Because part of getting an assessment is not just your child has autism, it's your child has autism, but these are the things you need to be doing. You know, these are his or her challenges, and this is how you need to address them. They need speech therapy, they need occupational therapy, they need ABA, whatever those challenges are, it should also be an opportunity to connect to those resources. And unfortunately, we still hear, you know, sometimes even here in our community that that's not happening. Yeah. They might just go and, you know, get, you know, written autism and there you go, you don't know what to do with that. And that's, I think, part of why the coalition exists. We want to connect parents to those resources. There's a lot of resources, great resources here in San Antonio, and we want to be able to connect families easily. But also, we want to gather information on what resources are lacking. What do we also need to be doing to help our community?
And so, Berenice, thank you, and that's really important. So that, and a number of years ago, obviously, we weren't really diagnosing children under the age of 5 with autism, yes. And so that has changed. We really want to raise that awareness to let people know that an autism diagnosis can occur, you know, much earlier, between 2 years old. Berenice was holding up her 2 fingers to me the other day, and something. So if you're concerned about your child, it's never too early to start those questions and for the practitioners to start those evaluations. So we really want to make sure that we get that information out there. So your practitioner, your medical home, so we hope you have a medical home. If you don't, please find a medical home. And your practitioner should be doing those evaluations at 18 and 24 months. Additionally, if you have concerns, you can call the ECI, Early Childhood Intervention. It's a statewide program. There are 3 programs in San Antonio, Easter Seals, Center for Healthcare Services, and Brighton Center. If you call any of those 3 agencies, they will send you to the correct ECI for what your zip code or what your address is. And it's really important to start that process earlier. And they'll do an evaluation if there are red flags. And if it doesn't look like autism, they'll still do, if the child qualifies, speech therapy or occupational therapy or things like that. So if you have concerns, don't ignore that is in your gut. There are pathways for you to get that process done. And additionally, in our community, we know that the waiting list for a full diagnostic assessment can be up to a year long. So we know that, and as Berenice indicated, that's why this project exists, because we want to lessen that waiting list, but we need people to register with Autism Lifeline links so we know where you are, if you're on a waiting list, how long that waiting list is, so we can impact change. But we really also want to stress that if your child gets a medical diagnosis and school does not honor that, or they test them at school and they decide that the child doesn't have an educational deficit, it doesn't mean your kid's not autistic. So at all, we're registering families that if you are autistic by medical diagnosis or by educational diagnosis, and all of the programs that we all have will, most of the programs will serve that child, whether it's a medical or an educational diagnosis. We have a question. Thank you, Lynn, for sending in your question on our Facebook Live event. So her 2 questions are about respite and about ABA. So respite, as far as respite, any of the agencies we talked about, Special Reach, Respite Care San Antonio, Camp, and if they're an older person over 18, the best place is really starting at the ARC, and they can send you in the right direction. If it's someone with a comorbid diagnosis, some of those other pathways may be a little more restrictive, but by registering with Autism Lifeline links, if you are a person who's over 18, we're going to send you to ARC so they can start to tell you what the appropriate adult resources are. And if you're a kiddo, we're going to send you over to NB McCann, and they'll start that process about what those appropriate resources are and send referrals from there. As far as ABA, it's another big gap in our community. but I'm going to toss this over to Dr. Cruz to talk a little bit about ABA, applied behavioral analysis, what it is in a nutshell, and how you access it, knowing that it's difficult to access, unfortunately. But Dr.
Okay,
Cruz.
so applied behavior analysis, ABA, is considered one of the best therapies for children with autism. There's decades of research indicating the effectiveness of its use. And basically what we try to do in applied behavior analysis is we look at what is going on in the child's environment and how can we change things in the environment to positively impact that child. Whether it be that we need the child to be able to communicate with talking because right now they're not talking, or sometimes it's decreasing challenging behaviors because maybe they're aggressive towards someone else. And so what we do is we assess and then we bring in some strategies that will help change the environment so that the child can be more successful while we're teaching new skills that can then replace those challenging behaviors. And then we have really effective strategies for teaching children with autism skills. So it's not, they're not going to be able to go most of the time to a regular education classroom and just learn from that without any modifications. But if we can change the environment a little bit and we can give teachers some strategies on how to present things a little differently, then the children are able to learn.
And you can go to the Autism Community Network's website to learn more about ABA, or you can go to the TexABA website, which is Texas ABA, and also Autism Speaks and Autism Society to look up a little more about what that is. But as far as access, you can, access is a challenge. We have a limited number of providers in our community. There are very few insurances that pay for it, but please know it is something that we are working on in this project, in this collaborative, to try to increase access, increase exposure, and bring more providers to town. But again, we need to know that you're looking for that as well.
So currently, insurance companies, private insurance companies, there's a mandate in Texas for ABA to be a covered benefit. But sometimes there's some loopholes through that, because if you're not funded in Texas, then maybe it's not covered. And as we're finding out, sometimes even though it's supposed to be covered, they make it a little bit difficult to obtain.
So you might have to
but if you have a private insurance, that's something that should be covered. Unfortunately, right now for our families that are on Medicaid, ABA is not a covered service under Medicaid. And that's something that we've been working on with TexABA, which is the Texas group on applied behavior analysis, in order to really try to change that. And that's something we'll be working on with legislation so that our kids can have access to ABA therapy. But in the meantime, we do have state-funded programs specifically offer ABA for children. We have a program funded through CARD and through one of our all agencies, Autism Treatment Center. And so we will send families over there for some therapy, but I know that both of them have a long waiting list. Yeah. There's other programs that you can sign up for, like Masonic and Variety. They're kind of like scholarship money that you can apply for, and then they can be used in different ways, or one of the ways can be for ABA therapy.
So in that vein, talking about other services that might be available, or other funding that you could get for services for your loved one on the spectrum, or your loved one with autism, we want to bring in Heather Long from the ARC, and Heather's going to talk to us about the waiver programs, and there are lots of seven different waiver programs. Heather's going to hit those in the 6 minutes we have left, and then and how you access them, and how in the imperative of getting on this waiver list.
Right. So just kind of going back to that whole stress level of families, that is a huge stressor. Is where do I get funding or resources to pay for programs and services for my child or my adult with autism? So there are programs in every state, really, in the United States, called Medicaid waiver programs. All states coordinate their waiver programs differently. So the state of Texas, we have 7. So it's a little confusing for families to try to figure out what waiver I'm supposed to go to, how long are the wait lists. All of the wait lists are very long, depending on what waiver program you're looking at. It could be up to 14 years long before you actually get services. So, like Cara, you were saying, it's imperative, even if you have a suspicion that your child has any kind of developmental delay, that you reach out and find out about these waiver programs. Any Baby Can is a good place to for families to go. The ARC of San Antonio, we can meet with families. We can all help you get on these waiting lists. So essentially what they do is these programs provide an individual, a child or an adult, Medicaid, and in addition to the Medicaid, long-term support services. And that could be, depending on the waiver, it could be specialized therapies, it could be behavioral supports, respite care. For adults, it could be a day program, it could be host companion, where an adult could have a family member or a friend be a paid caregiver for them on an ongoing basis. So it's a whole array of support services that can be provided throughout their lifetime. Again, there's 7 different waivers, and a lot of families might be familiar with the terms CLAS or HCS, Texas Home Waiver, medically dependent children's program, deaf, blind, multiple disability. But again, if just to get started on that, you can reach out to the ARC and we can help, or Any Baby Can, to get plugged into those resources.
Yeah, the case managers at the ARC and at Any Baby Can are experts on getting families that information. So yeah, super important.
And so often what we find with families when they have a younger child, they're like, oh no, I don't need it, I won't need, because the assumption that, they're going to be at home forever and they're not going to work or things like that. And so we really want to encourage families, because we know those waiting lists are 11 to 14 years. By the time your child comes up on that list, they could be an adult and,
right.
and need those supportive services to have a fulfilled.
And where is your family at that time? You
That's
don't
right.
know what differences or challenges are happening at that time.
And one thing with the waivers it's a little confusing for families is they think they have to have Medicaid to get on the wait list. You do not.
Good
In
point.
fact, a waiver is called a waiver because one of the criteria is that only a child's income is considered on the waiver, and so they're able to qualify for the Medicaid waiver regardless of their parents' income and resources.
I'm so glad you said that.
Yes, and there's only one
Yeah.
waiver that doesn't fall under that particular definition, and it's the Texas Home Living Waiver. But all the other waivers function in that respect, where they waive the household or the parent's income and resources.
Right.
Yeah.
And the waivers can be used, as you said, for specialized programs, for specialized therapies, day in-home
provider
care,
correct.
job.
Support employment.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because again, we want to make sure that the adults are even young
Yeah, and
people
actually,
futuring to
like,
jobs.
more of the supported employment or the job coaching, that really is offered more through the Texas Workforce Solutions, which is formerly DARS. However, the waivers can provide some assistance. They provide more of the pre-vocational training in a day habilitation program setting, like we have at the ARC, or there's over 25 day habilitation programs throughout San Antonio. And so all of the waivers, CLAS, HCS, will help families pay for those programs.
And so, and within a few months, you can look for it on all of our websites. We're going to be doing what we're calling Pathways to Inclusion, and Pathways to Independence, I'm sorry. And it's going to talk about how you get a waiver, how you get a ticket to work, how you can maintain your SSI benefits and still have work and be employed, because it's really important that quality of life is available to people with autism as well. It's not just anybody else. So we are at about time. There is never enough time to talk as much as we'd love to talk and share all of the amazing resources that we have in this community, knowing that we still have some room to grow and improve our system of care. And of course, the way we do that is by sharing, by registering, and by getting connected with these organizations. So really, through Autism Lifeline links, we encourage everyone, adult and a child, for their guardian to go and register at Autism Lifeline links. From there, you'll fill out some information, and then a care coordinator will call you, and you'll be connected with one or more of the agencies that are our partner agencies, and we'll be onboarding more of those partners so you can have seamless referrals in that system. I'd like to thank Any Baby Can for hosting us today. We will do more of these, and please let us know subjects or topics. We just kind of spitballed these, so if you have specific things that you want to know, please send those over to any of our links. and we will do that. So we'd like to thank Dr. Cruz, Ms. Heather Long, Ms. Tisha Gonzales, the team at Any Baby Can. Please do like us on Facebook, and we hope you have a wonderful time and get connected and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.